Welcome to the Talking with the School of Transportation podcast, presented by Centennial College. With your hosts, Ian Campbell and Harnek Gill. Let's get into it now.
And we're back. And as always, I'm here with Harnek Gill.
Hello, everybody. How's it going, Ian?
Not too. Do you hear that horns?
Yeah.
We got an alarm going
Guys
off
park
outside.
their cars over there.
This is fun. Yeah, if you're a Centennial student, please don't park in the Plumbers Union. It's
They
not
will tow.
recommended. They will.
They will tow. Yeah. So we're joined today.
By a very special guest that's been months in the making.
We've been waiting to hear from you for a while.
Hello, fellas. Good to be here.
This is Alex Grupp, the coordinator of the motorcycle and power sports programs.
Motorcycle and Power Sports Product Repair Techniques program.
Oh, wow.
As well as level 1 and level 2 apprenticeship.
Nice. Is there only level 1 and level 2 apprentice?
There's only 2 levels. Yep.
Really? Okay.
Yep. Only
Gotcha.
2 levels.
Okay.
And that's mainly for motorcycle, or is that power sport?
That is motorcycles only.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that is motorcycles only.
So is that a compulsory trade? They have to go through their apprenticeship?
It is a compulsory Red Seal trade. Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
Except for the safety issue, right? Isn't there a safety thing where if you have your 310S, you can write a safety for a motorcycle? Some gray area there that's not really good?
It's still a gray area as far as I know, because I think they reversed that.
Did they?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
that was a thing, but as far as I know, sometimes it's, as you may be aware, difficult to get information from the ministry, but
No.
they were trying to take that back.
Okay.
So you need
Which I think is huge. You need to have it that way.
Yeah, I mean, motorcycles have vastly different, steering and suspension components.
100%.
So if you're qualified to work on a car, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're qualified to work.
Or not knowledgeable enough.
Or not knowledgeable enough,
Yeah.
I should say that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just like truck and coach.
Exactly.
Right? Like, so different trades, different components and all sorts of stuff like that. I have to be honest. I always just look at the motorcycle and power sports programs, and I just go motorcycle.
Yeah.
I
Kinda.
say that's a motorcycle program, but there's a lot more to it than just motorcycles. So, what other types of vehicles or equipment are you guys dealing with?
So we start off with, even outdoor power equipment. So things like string trimmers and lawnmowers, snow blowers, that type of equipment, because, 2-stroke engine is a 2-stroke engine, whether it's, 50cc or 750cc. So we start with the, sort of the real fundamentals, the really easy to work on stuff, things that they can take apart in a short, 2-hour lab and put back together, just to get the sort of fundamentals of the theory and get the muscles, the muscle memory working in their hands and their
Absolutely.
brains.
Yeah. Which is needed.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere. And even the smaller units still have the fundamentals to go into anything after that.
Yeah, I mean, they still have an ignition system. They
Mhm.
still have a fuel system. They have, an engine and then a clutch system. So, it's a great place to start. That way they're not overwhelmed. And it's just a great way to start. Now, what Harnek said, you're absolutely right. When they come into the program, it's all about the motorcycles. Why are we working on these things? And then when we explain to them, well, before you can do that, you have to be able to do this.
Yeah.
But this will enable you to do that.
Plus more, because if you're able to work on those smaller things, then there's opportunity above and beyond motorcycles.
That
Exactly.
is so funny, though, because our other coordinator that we just talked to on the last podcast said almost the same thing. When, you have all these students who get in and right away they want to talk about EVs and hybrids. It's like,
Yeah,
well, before we
that's
do
true.
that, we got to start at the basics. So that's almost a universal thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's very interesting. So when they come in for an apprenticeship program, is it, now I'm used to block or day release. Is that a similar setup? How much time are they coming in for?
Each level is 1 8-week block.
Okay.
So there isn't any day release. It's just 8 weeks and you're here.
Yeah.
Now, Centennial College is the only game in Ontario now. So we've got students that are coming from, Ottawa and up
Wow.
Northern Ontario and Western Ontario, all over the place. So it is a fair commitment for them if they're commuting, or some of them are, doing a Airbnb for that 8-week period. But
Yeah.
it's definitely a commitment, but we've got students from all over the province.
That's great.
Yeah, I'd imagine the dedication is so strong for someone who's willing to come so far to do those programs. Must be awesome.
Well, if they want to advance in their careers and get their license, their 310G eventually, then yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a commitment.
Yeah, that's cool. I've had a few students from Thunder Bay that would do the same thing. And you see how much they're here for. That it's not a joke. They're here for the real thing. And we see some of the local students, I'd say, that kind of take it as a little bit of a vacation more than a serious learning curve. So that's a nice thing for an instructor or teacher to have somebody dedicated to want to be there. Do you find that overall the power sports industry is a bit more dedicated, or the students are more interested because it's such a niche kind of field?
Yeah, I definitely find it's much more passion driven.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's definitely this, coolness about, motorcycles
Sure.
and, dirt bikes, not just street bikes, but dirt bikes also. So there's that definite sort of cool factor. And a lot of them grow up, maybe their parents rode motorcycles, or they worked in the garage with dad maintaining, his stuff, or mom.
Yeah.
I find that they definitely come in with a certain level of enthusiasm, and that's amazing, right? Because it's work.
Totally. Yeah.
It's work.
Enthusiasm makes our job way easier for the most part. Some people can be a little too excited.
So I guess another question I have is, when you look at these apprenticeship programs, if I compare that to automotive apprenticeship, we see a lot of variance here. We see programs where they're very busy and the numbers are huge. And then there's times where the numbers come way down. I always find level 3 classes are busy, level 1's not so much. What do the numbers look like? And do you see any sort of trends?
The last few years, particularly over COVID, the numbers were quite low. So we would run an apprenticeship class. We can run up to 20. So we would run classes with 10, 11, 12. This year in particular, class is full. It's got 20 students in it. Can't take any more. Level 2 coming up in January is full, also with 20. So I'm not sure what happened between last year and this year, but there are definitely more students, or I should say, apprentices that are coming back to complete their levels, whether they didn't want to come back during those COVID years. I mean, we were still here,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We were still here. We were teaching.
Partially online,
Partially
here.
online,
Yeah.
but we were still here. And whether they wanted to, I find our particular students don't do well in online learning.
100%. Yeah.
There's
the odd one that succeeds, but for the most part, they need to be hands-on. They need to see.
Relatable. I don't do well in an online classroom environment. I want to be there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whether that's part of it, that's sort of well behind us now,
Yeah.
but the numbers are great. So apprentices, obviously they're all employed. So when they leave here, they're going back to work. So it's really good to see. It's really good to see.
And your other program, the diploma program you have, that's a 1-year
certificate.
So 1-year certificate, and that, what does that lead you towards, or what would that be?
So that's really your gateway. In that 1 year, you get the equivalent of your level 1 apprenticeship training.
Oh, it does. Okay, great.
We also hit the curriculum for the small engine mechanics license.
I see.
So in that 1 year, you get all the fundamentals from all the systems. So engines, electrical, powertrains, chassis, brakes, spread across 28 weeks. So 2 semesters, 14 weeks each. And that really gets your foot in the door. If you just walk into a motorcycle shop or power sports motorcycle shop and say, hey, I want to be an apprentice. And then you walk in and say, hey, I've dedicated a year of my life, a whole bunch of money and time, and I want to be an apprentice.
Yeah.
Which one would that potential employer likely choose?
For sure. I think, remember, last year you had a job fair as well, and try and help get some of those students to interact with some of those employers.
Yeah, we have a job fair nearing the end of the second semester.
Yeah.
So at the end of the program every year. So we invite potential employers, and a lot of them have reached out to us throughout that year to say, hey, we're going to be looking for an apprentice. And we say, well, great, because we're going to have a job fair.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like speed dating, but it's job interviews,
Yeah.
right? So they'll sit across the potential employer. They'll have a resume in hand. They'll do a 15 to 20 minute interview. And then they'll circulate amongst all the other potential employers there. we've had students walk away with job offers from
which is
that.
awesome. That's so good. And what a potential for a student. You come in and enthusiastic to try and learn, and then you have this opportunity at the end. And with the industry, it sounds like it's a thriving industry at the moment.
Yeah, the industry, I will say that, COVID did not hurt our industry. COVID, really propelled it forward. Everybody was buying everything, whether it was, snowmobiles or ATVs or motorcycles, because I guess people weren't traveling.
Boats. My neighbor went nuts trying to buy a new boat. He sold it at a high, and I'm like, what are you going to get? And he had a real hard time trying to get another boat.
Yeah, so there was all this product sold over those COVID years, plus as well as all the other years. And now it needs to be maintained, it needs to be serviced, it needs to be repaired. So the industry sort of, a big uptick in demand for technicians. So we're trying to feed that demand. We're trying to get as many of these folks employed as possible.
That's awesome. I love it. But we were talking earlier about one of your labs that you're running right now. And that's a Briggs and Stratton engine, I believe, where the students do a tear down and rebuild kind of thing.
Yeah. So in the first semester, they start off, once we've moved through the two-stroke engine stuff, we move on to the four strokes. And one of their sort of capstone projects for this semester is they get a single cylinder overhead valve Briggs and Stratton engine. We run them first, so they're all runners.
This is my favorite part of this, because coming from the drivetrains lab, we don't run anything because it would not run.
Yeah. So, the college invested in these engines, and I think we bought 30 or 40 of them over the last couple of years.
Wow.
They all run, so we run them. We put them on a test bench and, add gas and pull the rope, and they run, and we listen to them. And then the very next week, they start to disassemble them, and we go right down to the crankshaft. Then the lab, our theory sort of coincides with our lab. So as they're taking the head apart, we're talking about valves and valve seats and valve springs. And then eventually, once they've done all their labs, they reassemble, and fingers crossed, they all run again.
Yeah. And you run them after to see.
And we run them after to verify.
And that's awesome. That's so real world.
And I loved, we were talking earlier about the confidence of having that thing run at the end, because you were able to make that work.
Well, it's great to watch. As they bring their engine over to the engine bench, you can see the anxiety. Yeah. There's other students that are watching and waiting to run theirs, and there's this anxiety about will it or won't it.
Yeah.
And then that excitement, like when they pull that rope and it splutters to life and settles into a nice idle. It's just, you can see the
that's cool.
Excitement.
I remember doing engine jobs at the shop, and I'd be like, I would grab one of my apprentices, hand the keys, and be like, I'm grabbing a coffee. Fire that up for me. Let me know the result. I've put like 20 hours into this or something. I don't really want to be there for startup sometimes until you gain that confidence and understand how or maybe build that confidence in yourself and what you can pull off. So I think starting in the school doing something like that is such a special opportunity.
Well, I think for me, even, any engine I've built, decades into my trade, there's always that little bit of hesitation right before you push that start button. You're running through a mental checklist. Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this?
Yeah.
And then when you hit that button and it fires up and it sounds great, it's just like, yes.
For us, one of the worst feelings is starting up a Ram or a Hemi engine after you put lifters in.
The
because
it's
they're
noisy.
not bled up yet, so it just misfires and runs like a bag of crap for a while, and you're like, oh, was that me or was that them? Hopefully it clears up.
100%.
Yeah, it's like that with Harleys, with the hydraulic lifters.
Sure.
We used to soak them in a little container of oil to try to bleed all the air out as much as possible.
Bleed exactly.
You still sometimes get a tick, but should go away after 30 seconds.
Yeah, some of these new ones, especially flat rate, you're like, we'll throw them in overnight, but hopefully they get oil in them. I think we should get into some history about you. How long have you been teaching for, and what was your background before that?
Well, I started here in 2018. Prior to that, I'd worked at various motorcycle dealerships. I had my own shop for about a decade.
Awesome.
I actually originally taught at Centennial for the first time in 2002.
Really?
I was doing some factory training for Harley Davidson at the time, and they actually, rather than send students to their training facility in northern Alberta, they actually put on a traveling roadshow for Ontario students and Eastern Canada students.
The district, yeah.
Yeah, so Harley Davidson Canada, or Dealey Harley Davidson, at that time rented a space here, and brought their factory training here. So factory technicians would come to the college. So that was 2002, I believe, with the introduction of the V-Rod.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So that was my first real teaching experience.
How long did you do the factory training for?
It lasted 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so between Ontario at Centennial here, then I went on to Montreal and spent a glorious 6 or 7 weeks in Montreal.
Yeah.
With the Quebec students.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was so much fun.
What was the difference? What did you find different about it?
Well, they didn't come to Ontario. They wanted their course in French.
Okay.
So my French is minimal.
Yeah.
But I did. So we worked out of a college similar to Centennial, transportation college in Montreal, and then I had a French teacher there that was assisting me and basically just translating. He was great though.
That's cool.
And it was an awesome experience. I had a really good time.
That's neat. I think you learned so much being abroad a little bit and trying different things and.
Yeah. So that was my first sort of clue that, if and when I ever got tired of, working on the bench, that there was a life after wrenching.
Really cool.
Still in the industry, still, talking and showing and, being around motorcycles and these power products, but not necessarily at a bench working on it.
Well, what got you into the trade, into the bench in the first place? Was it just a passion you always had, or?
Necessity. Funnily enough, I dropped out of college. College wasn't for me when I went at the time.
What did you originally take?
Silly stuff like business and, economics and,
Gotcha.
Stuff that for a 19-year-old was totally not relevant. And I was already, I was riding motorcycles, and then I started to travel, and I traveled in Europe quite a bit, but I didn't have a lot of money to get my motorcycle fixed. So I had to kind of, figure it out on my own. And it just kind of worked out. I liked it, and I had an aptitude for it. And then I just turned it into a career.
What was the first shop that you worked at then after that? So you traveled Europe. That must have been pretty cool.
It was very cool. But actually the first shop I worked at was a Harley shop in a place called Whitwood in Yorkshire,
No way.
England. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? Did you need some cash and jumped in the shop, or was it?
That's a good question. I was actually, so I was sort of static for a while in the area, and then just working to save money to continue to travel. And I was actually working for a temp agency, and I was across the road, loading these tractor trailers with boxes of, apple juice or orange juice or something.
Yeah.
Longingly looking at the motorcycle shop across the road and these bikes, going in and out, and seeing the mechanics out there, interacting with the customers. And I said, I can kind of spin a wrench. I'm not an expert by any means, but, so I walked over there and I just sort of said, I would love to learn. Right now I'm working for this temp agency loading tractor trailers, but this looks way cooler. Would you hire me? And he did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he gave me a chance, and I was there for probably a good year. Probably a good year with a fantastic mentor that, really took me under his wing and taught me, and that was it.
That's amazing.
That was it. And then I was hooked.
And then what was after that? Because that would be Europe, so it would be a different license than here. How did it work in Ontario for you?
Yeah, so eventually I moved back to Ontario. I guess that would have been 1991. Walked into a motorcycle shop at that time. It was in Scarborough, and I said, "Hey, I spent a year, maybe a little bit more at the shop in England, and this is what I want to do. Would you give me a chance?" And they said yes.
Cool.
And then hired me as an apprentice, and then registered me, set me up with the ministry, all that stuff, and
Awesome.
Nice.
And I got licensed in, I believe it was 1994 or 5.
And when did you open up your own shop?
That was in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah, and that ran for 10 years till 2015.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
What would be your favorite job to do, or favorite repair job or service, something in the shop? Like what was like, oh, I get to do this today?
it started off as all that cool stuff, building engines, high performance, cams, and it started off with all that kind of stuff. And then, believe it or not, that could get a little monotonous too after a while.
I'm sure.
So I don't think I actually have a favorite. I think my favorite is when the customer rides away and you can see it, you can tell he's got a big grin inside of his helmet.
Nice.
Then it doesn't really matter what job I did. It's just like,
I feel like that's such a difference from the auto industry versus your industry, because they love their motorcycle or power sport unit, whereas a lot of our vehicles are just tools for them to travel in.
Necessities.
So they drive away pissed because the bill was so high versus, oh, I got my bike back finally, or whatever the case might be. So that's a really cool perspective on your industry with that, because these guys are in love with their bike or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess sometimes you do have the customers that are grateful that you saved their car. Do you know what I mean? And then they're saving money by not having to buy a new car.
Yeah, but I would
fixed.
see the majority would be more, oh, this is the bill. Like, I think that's kind of the attitude I get from it. So,
yeah, customers in the sort of motorcycle power sports industry, it's very few of them use it as a commuter. Like it is their recreational vehicle. It is their therapist. It is their, their escape.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
their happy place.
Yeah, they'll pay you hundreds or thousands of dollars with a smile on and be like, awesome, I'm going on my trip, or I'm going, on my ride. And yeah, that's the rewarding part for me.
Very cool. And I hope students kind of capture that too. I hope this, if there's anybody listening to this that's in your department or thinking about a power sport opportunity, that's such a cool factor, like seeing that joy on your client's face at the end of the day is definitely something that's going to make you go home and be happier, I think. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much to be said for making somebody happy.
Yeah.
And they pay you for that.
Yeah. That's always good.
And now I don't want to be Mr. Negativity here, but what was like the worst thing to deal with? Either a type of repair on a motorcycle or a power sport unit, or
for me personally, I think as technology and performance and all of those things that most people that ride motorcycles are really into and want to stay on top of, they become much more difficult to work on.
Gotcha.
Just access to things like spark plugs.
Okay.
Would take, in some cases, a couple hours worth of work just to, remove the tank, remove the airbox,
Really?
Move all the coolant lines, just simple operations became time consuming.
Yes, I get that completely.
And sometimes frustrating. But so I didn't enjoy those types of bikes as much.
Okay.
But the sacrifice is they're fast.
Yeah.
So that's the cost of performance.
For
It's
sure.
just things are packed in tight.
Mhm.
They're packed into a tight package, and access becomes more difficult. Doing an air filter on which some of the GL 1800 Gold Wings,
Okay.
is a 4-hour job.
Wow.
To do an air filter, which I didn't love that.
No.
And some customers would be like, "Could you just check it?" No, if I'm going 4 hours in, you're getting a new one.
Yeah. For the $30 air filter.
It may have been $80,
Okay.
but still,
Yeah.
if we're there, you're just getting a new one.
100%. Yeah. That's like a clutch for us. You're 4 hours in, something like that. That would, what's an extra $200 when your bill's already $800? Let's replace it.
Yeah, and those bikes had airbags, rider airbags, right? So you had to work around airbags, and airbags on a motorcycle. To a motorcycle guy, it's like, whoa, what do I do with this yellow plug? There's all these yellow plugs, and
to most of us, we're like, you just unplug it. Don't just unplug it, but
disconnect the battery and wait 2 minutes.
Yes.
I always do that every time.
Every time. That kind of leads me to another question that I had based on the motorcycle industry. I guess power sports in general, whether it be a golf cart or, I follow Keanu Reeves' company, the Arch Motorcycles, and they're all EV bikes. How has that infiltrated your industry like it is ours right now with all these green plates all over the road?
I don't think it's infiltrated my industry at all.
Okay.
I see a lot of electric scooters
Yeah.
and a lot of electric assisted bicycles,
Mhm.
but I can't remember the last time I actually saw a fully electric motorcycle.
Okay.
At this point in time, anyways, the technology, at least in the motorcycle package, is expensive and not much range.
Yeah.
So in a car, you can get regenerative technologies,
Sure.
so they can recharge the batteries, whether it's braking or, I'm not really up on the car stuff.
Of
but
course. Yeah.
motorcycles, there's really none of that at this point. So the available range
Gotcha.
versus cost, and I think a lot of motorcycle enthusiasts.
Yes, I agree with this. I know exactly where you're going.
I want to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to
exactly.
feel it.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears. So I don't know that it's cut on yet. I think if the price ever comes down significantly, if you live in an urban center, like, we're in Toronto, it makes sense. Absolutely.
Well, we see the e-bikes riding all over the place, but I feel like they're more throwaway units than actually being repaired. I feel like they're a lot of offshore.
It doesn't seem like a passion buy.
Yeah, it's more of a necessity buy.
Yeah.
And does that affect your industry at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I can definitely see a place for electric motorcycles.
Sure.
People that have, large properties and want to ride,
Totally.
dirt bikes.
Yeah.
But the neighbors complain because of the noise. So, an off-road electric motocross bike makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
They don't make any noise. Racetracks, they put racetracks as far away from, big towns or big cities as possible because they make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So Canadian Tire Motorsports Park or Shannonville, so that's one way around that. But in terms of making sort of big inroads into the your typical consumer market, I'm not seeing that right now.
Gotcha. And I think you nailed it I think you're on the right track when you say they want to feel that. Like, you hop on a Harley, the vibration is a big part of that,
Yes.
riding experience. And Harnek knows nothing about that.
But I can nod. They can't see me on the podcast nodding, but I am nodding along
But that
knowingly.
Yeah. That vibe and fixing because of the vibration and all that stuff is part of the industry, right?
Yeah. And, I think if I was to think about it in, four-wheel terms, I mean, if you jump into a, whatever 8-cylinder Porsche
Sure.
Versus an electric Porsche, which one's going to, raise the blood pressure more?
Yeah.
Definitely the internal combustion engine, right?
Well,
Well, I
apparently
guess
that Tesla Plaid is
The one
pretty
thing
nutty,
with
but-
EVs we're seeing on certain vehicles is they can be very fast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Whereas you look at a motorcycle and it's already very fast and it's already, you have no body around you. You know what I mean? So there's already a thrill in driving a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Or riding a motorcycle compared to a car. So, I don't know. It's kind of interesting with what we have with a car. It's so much different than what you're going to have with a motorcycle with EVs and stuff. It just, yeah.
I mean, I think we're going to have a generation that won't know any different.
I think so.
You know,
too.
like we've
Yeah.
got, young people now that don't know what life was like without a smartphone.
Yeah.
So I think at some point, we're going to have young people that get into motorcycles that didn't ever ride an internal combustion
Yeah.
engine powered motorcycle. So their only point of reference will be
Exactly.
that electric bike. And yeah, they're fast. There's no doubt about it. They can certainly go fast.
It's like a Demolition Man reference.
Yeah.
Remember that? Three seashells? Oh,
Three
I've lost
seashells?
both of you guys. If there's
I
any
know of the
listeners,
movie.
yeah.
But
No, remember Demolition Man, and he comes out in this red challenge, or what was it? Red Chevelle, I think. He fires it up. Everything's all electric. He fires it up and then runs through it. Is this the same movie? I'm going to cut all this mess.
Yeah. Cut this mess out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
remember that? Was it Demolition? I'm going to have to watch
I
it.
never got around to actually watching all of Demolition Man. I have to. It's on my list of things I
Steven
have to watch.
No, it's
not
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he hops in this muscle car. Everything's battery powered, and then he hops in this muscle car and fires them. It's like, whoa, and gets all excited, and then he like jumps the car or something.
It's like that's the one where like there's no violence or anything.
No.
So like you push a
Yeah.
guy and everyone's like, what?
exactly.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question. We're talking EV. Can you do like a burnout in an electric vehicle?
I think you can now because, well, what they're doing with EVs has changed a little bit, and you're starting to see it with like the EV Mustang and the
Sports.
EV Challenger that's coming, right? So they're trying to make it mimic. I want to say a real car.
Yeah.
I want to say they're trying to make it mimic a real car,
A traditional car, I guess, yeah.
vehicle, as best, because that's what people want, and that's stopping a lot of integration of EV, because like we don't want that, right? We don't. Not everyone wants the Prius and that type of vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny because they'll have speakers in the car making an exhaust noise.
Mhm.
So
Right.
the driver hears the exhaust noise, but no one else outside does, right? It's
It's all parameter based. So like some of your new bikes are all sensor based, sensor driven, automatics, all that stuff. Same thing with this. You can have an electric motor do a burnout, but your sensor is going to say, I'm doing a burnout, I don't want to. And it'll limit the power till it
Kick in the
hooks.
traction
Yeah,
control.
exactly.
And,
So I think that if you hit the sport mode on some of them, I think you can mimic some of those ideas. But if you're thinking about actual like going fast, you don't want that slip. So I think they kind of watch that.
Yeah. I'll have to wait till the electric Challengers come and I start doing some PDIs.
Yeah. Those customers may not want to buy those first ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest hurdle to sort of mass market electric motorcycles, and I'm certainly no expert. This is just stuff I get from talking and reading.
Yeah.
Is just range, because most people
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
It is more recreational. So when they get that day off and they want to go for a ride, they don't want to ride around the city.
Yeah.
They want to go, north or east and they just don't have the range at this point in time.
Or in the fall, go see the leaves and all that stuff. You can't go for a 300K tour and make it home.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's readily available to get, gas at a gas station, and it doesn't take a lot of gas for a motorcycle. A little bit takes you a long way.
Yeah.
So something that you're not going to see. Another thing I was wondering about is, we often talk about in the automotive sphere how there's so much gadgets. And what I'm talking about is adaptive cruise control. We have vehicles that have night vision. We have HUDs, heads-up displays. We have, lane sense and all sorts of just bells and whistles. And a lot of technicians, the way like this is a bane of our existence. Right?
Yeah.
Why do you want 2 iPads here and all that kind of stuff? But I don't know where you see that kind of stuff in a motorcycle, or is there any sort of equivalent there?
Well, interestingly enough, we're catching up very quickly. There's been adaptive cruise control for, probably 3 or 4 years that I can think of now.
Okay.
I was recently listening to something with a Bosch engineer, and they were talking about some of the things that they've been developing. And, one was like rear collision warning, so, some of these sensors can actually bring this motorcycle to a complete stop from, I think it was anything under 100 miles per hour. So there was frontal collision avoidance systems. There was rear impact sensors. There was adaptive cruise control, lean angle, right? Because in a motorcycle, we're leaning. So lean angle ABS, lean angle traction control. There was group riding sensors, so to make sure that you're supposed to ride in staggered formation, so to make sure you're not too close to the person in front of you, it could actually adjust. And like it was very, very interesting, amazing technology, what we can do. Am I running out to buy the first one? Probably not.
Okay.
It's not like Bosch is new at it. I'm sure it'll be amazing.
Kind of takes away from some of that riding experience, though, I think, as well. While it's safe and nice, maybe great for a newer rider, but a seasoned rider that, wants to be in control of everything. And I kind of think back. I have a friend that very wealthy, can buy any car in the world. He decided to buy a 1959 VW Bug, 53 horsepower. But he goes, it's the best driving experience in the world because I have to think about which gear I'm going to get up this hill in. And I think that kind of goes back to a motorcycle where it's more of a riding experience than just a whole bunch of sensors on there keeping you straight.
Yeah. I guess it depends. Like, is that a, daily commuter where you're sitting on the highway for 2 hours? versus this is my, my vehicle that I drive on the weekend or, in certain times just to make myself a little happier. Right.
Yeah. My experience is that technology sells.
Really?
But actually, the typical newer consumer technology sells, right? It's like if you're buying a smartphone, you want the latest, 5G or 6G or whatever we're up to now, and the 3-lens camera and all that stuff. Whereas other people, I just want my old flip phone back. It was a phone. I didn't need it to, record video or take pictures. So I think there's a segment of the, motorcycle power sports industry that, it's got the latest, whatever, lean angle, traction control, ABS, whatever. And then there's the other segment that's going like, I just kind of want to ride a bike and be in control.
Yeah.
And not have all these other things intruding on my experience. And I understand both sides. I think, we need some of these aids now because some of these motorcycles are making crazy horsepower.
That's very true.
If you have a 200 horsepower motorcycle that weighs 500 pounds, you're going to need something to keep that thing in check, right? Otherwise, it's going to want to run away on you.
Yeah, and does sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think I remember the VFR might have been the first one with ABS braking. The Honda VFR, one of those similar styles.
BMW was the first.
Oh, that's right.
Motorcycle ABS.
Okay. But that wasn't that long ago that they came out with it, was it?
87-ish.
Really? Okay, then I'm completely off because I remember the VFR going to it in I think 2000-ish area where the VFR, the original ones didn't have it, and then they came out with that ABS VFR. And I remember the industry from there kind of really electrified and went from, fuel injection, a lot more stuff. And now so coming from our side of things where we went fuely way earlier, more or less, I think you guys are advancing at such a high clip compared to what we may have.
Well, a lot of the technologies is, developed for four-wheelers, for cars.
Yeah.
And then they just figure out how to make it smaller and adapt it to two wheels. There is some difference, of course, in, chassis and dynamics and things like that. But, Bosch, they make all kinds of stuff for automotive.
Absolutely, yeah.
BMW with the first ABS back in, I think it's 86.
Oh, wow.
One of your listeners will probably...
I hope we have that many listeners that can fact check us. Yes.
But that was basically an automotive ABS module that was stuck onto the side of the motorcycle.
Interesting.
Of course, now they make them small and they're hidden and they fit perfectly. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess BMW has been on kind of the cutting edge with a lot of that stuff. Now that I think of it, with some of the technology sort of things.
Yeah.
Very cool. What would be your favorite motorcycle of all time?
The one I'm currently riding?
Yeah. Which is?
Whichever one that is.
Whatever you're currently riding.
That went way over my head.
I suffer from MAD, so that's, motorcycle attention deficit disorder.
Got you, okay.
So whichever motorcycle is in my garage at the time, that's my favorite.
That's good.
I think I link my favorite motorcycles to specific experiences that I've had on them.
Gotcha.
If that motorcycle gave me like an awesome experience or joy on this one trip, that was my favorite motorcycle for a long time.
Cool.
Until another one gave me the same amount of happiness.
Okay. If you could pick any road to ride on anywhere in the world, do you have a bucket list ride that you want to do? Or maybe one that you've done that was just incredible?
Instantly when you say stuff like that, I think about, the Alps.
Okay.
Or the Pyrenees. So those are the big bucket list items, although I've done those, but they just stand out in my memory as so incredible and amazing. But right in our backyard, even in the US, the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yeah. That's what I think of. If I was to think of to go on a run somewhere, that would be top of the list and probably because it is fairly close.
It is close, and out west, in the Rockies, the $1 Million Highway, and just amazing roads in our backyard. But if I had to pick a favorite, I'm not sure if I can. I like my roads grippy, smooth, and twisty.
Gotcha.
So I'm not a huge, Route 66 kind of guy that, you can see for miles and miles. I like twisty roads.
Yeah, for sure.
And smooth and grippy.
That's cool. I like that.
All right. So another question I had was, what is one thing that your students sort of struggle with, or that one thing that they have the most amount of difficulty? Could be a concept or any sort of aspect of their time in school.
Electrical.
Okay.
Plain and simple.
Sounds similar to us.
Yeah, I think that's probably true for all the trades. I mean, they can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they can feel it.
Yeah.
But they can't see it, so it's a much bigger hurdle for them to jump.
Do you enjoy teaching that because it's challenging, or do you find it sometimes what's the word I'm thinking of?
Irksome.
Okay.
I don't think that was the word you were thinking
No,
of,
but that works.
I think it presents an interesting challenge because I love finding analogies to explain different concepts. If you can explain a single concept 10 different ways, you're winning, right? Because, not everybody gets the old, water tank and the pipe is, and the pressure and the flow, and, not everybody gets that. So if you can find a way to explain that
mm-hmm.
in a different way to a different person, and all of a sudden they kind of get it. It's like, yes. I remember one particular time we were talking about multimeters, voltmeters, and the student didn't quite understand, the range, 2 ohms, 2 kilo ohms,
Sure.
20 kilo ohms, on and on and on.
The prefixes and whatnot.
Yeah. So I said, if you think of like something like Google Maps, and you're zoomed right out and you can see the province of Ontario, and now you zoom in, now you can see the city of Toronto, and then you zoom in and you can see the town of, Scarborough. And then you zoom in and you can see your street, and then you zoom in and you can see your house. Well, you've just done all those scales. You've done from 2 ohms.
That's actually a really good way of explaining it.
So, that just sort of came to me as I was trying to find a way to explain it. And when I related it that way, they were like, okay, I totally get that now.
That relates to our last podcast that will be coming out on DVOM. So if your students need help with that, listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
I encourage them to listen to the podcast. I love listening to you guys. I've listened to every single one.
We appreciate it.
We have a fan.
We do.
Well,
it's been fun.
And no matter how much you think I've learned something every single podcast from some of your, from our colleagues.
So do we.
The other professors.
Absolutely. That's why I love doing this too.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn from all the different faculty.
And I think that's the main reason why we have it. Our goal is, and we have these ones on where informational about like motorcycle department and stuff, but we both really like those factual ones where it's like, hey, how can we explain this a few different ways so we get an analogy like you just said, to allow the students to hear it from 3-4 other people, not just their professor that's just kind of saying, learn it this way, so hopefully students do capture something from it.
Well, I think for me, working at the college, there's such a talent pool here. From all the different angles of the trade. And, if I ask a question of you or Harnek or any of the number of our other colleagues, it's just amazing that, they're willing to share not only information, but hey, here's a PowerPoint, here's a document or a lab sheet. Here's what I've used. Here's what I've tried. And it's not that different than working in a good job.
Mm-hmm.
When you're consulting with your other techs going, I'm not getting this. Have you seen this problem? Or how would you approach this? And that's amazing.
Yeah, we do have a really good team here. And I'm proud to be part of the Centennial College crew, I would say. I feel like we're doing really good work for the students. I feel like the crew we have, at least on our side, that we see, that's not a hit to the other side, but I feel like we're trying our best to make sure that they learn everything they possibly can. So,
I've worked with some mechanics over my 27, 28 years on the bench, and, they'll hold everything they know real close to the chest. It's like, you're going to steal my job or something. And then you work with those techs or my colleagues like I'm working with now. They're just like, oh, here, what do you want? Here's a PowerPoint that I use, and really nothing's a secret. Like, there's no secrets here. It's technology. It's it's theory. It's,
Yeah, we can only be better if we help one another. I think that's a great attitude towards whether you're working, beside a guy on the bench or whether you're working in another industry. I think just being kind and helping is going to benefit everyone. So awesome. Well, I think that kind of covers like the intro to Mr. Alex Grupp here, but we do have 2 final questions that we ask everybody. And because it's your first time, you get the OG questions.
Okay, so I guess our first question is, if you could operate any vehicle, doesn't have to be a motorcycle or anything like that, just anything. And we have the rule where you magically know how to, it's like the Matrix, you download the information of how to operate said vehicle. What would it be?
I'm a motorcycle guy through and through. However, I will answer this question differently.
Okay.
I think if I could operate one of those, like, 1 or 2 man submarines where you could just like dive deep.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
I think that would be like super cool, seeing what's like in the deep.
You do know what happened last year.
Yeah. Well, maybe not that deep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like I just want to see some coral reefs and, some colorful fish or something. But
that
I think
is a fantastic answer. I instantly pictured that and I was like, yep, I'm in.
I love that you pick something different than a motor, like out of your scope. I love that.
Yeah, that would be just so incredible just to see what's
go down. Yeah,
just
because I definitely know
it's
it's
a whole nother world down there.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, that we know nothing about. I don't necessarily want to go that deep, but
sure.
I think just putting around some tropical islands.
That would be really cool. What a great answer. I love that.
Yeah.
And the last question that we're going to give you is, if you had one meal to pick, unlimited funds, you do whatever you want. And I know you have a certain diet that you like to keep, but you could have anything you want from anywhere in the world. You could pick the chef to make it. What would that meal be?
Can I relay a quick story?
Of course. Yeah.
I was on a motorcycle trip, and I believe it was Switzerland. And I pulled into some tiny town. I believe it was called Chamonix. May not have pronounced that right. But it was like a medieval town, cobblestone.
Oh, wow.
Little square. And surrounding this, there was like, the baker, the cheese shop, the meat shop. And then at the one end of the square was a monastery. And the monks had been making wine forever.
Okay.
So I'm looking around, I'm hungry. So someone says, oh, go down, get a bottle of wine from the monks, come back to the bread shop, buy a stick of bread, go to cross over there and get the cheese from the cheese guy. And then we've got all these chairs and tables set up, and it's a beautiful afternoon, and you're surrounded by the Alps.
No way.
And you just, I broke off a chunk of bread, slathered some butter on it, threw some cheese on there, poured a glass of wine. And that was probably my favorite meal.
That sounds like heaven.
Of all time.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sitting in a medieval sort of town with cobblestone.
So you would go back there if you could.
And yes.
Oh, that wine and that. Yeah. Okay. That's a fantastic. You've had some very insightful, fantastic answers so far. I really like them.
Yeah. It's just really cool stuff.
Yeah. And beyond that, we got to know a bit more about the program that you're coordinating and how you guys run. So it's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate the support listening, and we loved getting to know you a bit more.
Appreciate it. And thanks for having me. Good luck with the editing.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Bye, guys.
This has been the Talking with SOT podcast with Harnek and Ian Campbell. Thanks for listening.